as we go through all of the work that we do every day. I know the subcommittees have been busy working as well. Thank you for that and putting in the extra time. I 99% of the time, I believe you're meeting on a weekly basis to come up with specifics that we can implement right away. I do know we're going to hear some summaries out of leaders in the room, Governor Abbott, maybe Governor Youngkin as well, and Nim Kidd, and some of the things that we've been going through as a country as far as disasters since January. Texas obviously was extremely devastating. Around the same time we saw New Mexico get hit, I had the chance to be there on the ground with the communities that were affected in both those states. And we're also still dealing with North Carolina and the families there that need help to continuing to be restored. This last weekend, on Saturday, we deployed another $28 million to North Carolina after 96 last week, and we'll continue to make that a priority, knowing how neglected they were under the previous administration. Listen, FEMA is much more responsive under President Trump to people's needs than it has been under previous administrations and President Biden. In fact, the data shows that we're over 100% more timely with dollars and with resources than any other time in the history of FEMA going back, is that we are responding quicker, deploying within hours to meet people on the ground with needs that they have. But also we need to make sure that as we do that, that we're being efficient with what the taxpayers have given us for resources. I sat with the president for several hours a couple of weeks ago and discussed 16 different disasters that we had open in this country and helped make decisions on getting resources out. Many of these disasters were still ones that have been open and needed to be handled and taken care of from previous years. And that is one of the things I'd like to charge your council with, is how long should a disaster be left open? How quickly should we deploy resources? And then how long can cases continue to be filed? That is one of the things that makes it difficult to deploy immediately, is when the termination date for a disaster goes on 15 to 20 years after the event has already occurred. The president believes that we should be in a disaster response portfolio and footprint, but the long-term mitigation should not be something that the federal government is continuing to be involved in to the extent that it has been in the past. We are in the middle of hurricane season, and so we're working hard to continue to stay prepared for that and notifications. And we've got a couple of months here yet where we're still going to be working with our local leaders to make sure that everything is pre-deployed and in position for whatever storm may come our way, and that we can help people get through those difficult times. And we will be putting out a lot of information today on FEMA as well as to how we have used resources under the Trump administration. I'd like to encourage all of you to be vocal if you've had interactions with the Trump administration and how positive that they've been, to share that with people and tell the story. Tell the story of how different FEMA has been the last 7-8 months under his leadership than it was previous to that. I'm so proud to work for a president that recognizes that disaster response needs to be led by local community leaders. They know best how to serve their communities, but also that we listen to them and the governors on how that response can be best be delivered. And then also that it shouldn't be based on political decisions. We certainly saw that under Joe Biden's administration, and that is not something that's happening under President Trump. President Trump believes that that help should be applied equally to Americans to help them get back on their feet and their families to get through difficult situations. So with that, Patrick, I'll turn it back over to you. I'm going to be able to stay for a while and listen and learn from all of you and gather more information and let you share with me your wisdom. If I have to step out early, I will miss you, but I'll get a summary of all of your work. And I just can't tell you all how grateful I am for all of your service and what you do for our country and putting so much time and effort into this council. And I do want to send my prayers to the folks in Minneapolis who've lost their children and have endured the tragedy that we saw yesterday. It just is absolutely horrific, the incident that we've seen, and we'll do all that we can to help those families heal and continue to lift them up in prayer and be grateful for the blessings that we have of family members that are still with us today. We ask for healing for those that are still injured, and that they will be able to get through that and be 100% whole again, and that we can do all that we can to help our country recover and get through this difficult time. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Patrick.
Madam Secretary, I want to thank you for your commitment to the work that this council is doing. I will assure you we are always, the leaders that are here, that are first responders and that are heading states such as Florida, Texas, Louisiana, others are always, Virginia, and all the others that are here, always keeping an eye on hurricane season. We understand the threat of that. This is, tomorrow will be the 25th anniversary of Katrina. So we remember and reflect, and the lessons learned from that are being utilized here today to make sure that we have a better response. You will hear success stories today from Texas and North Carolina. We heard them in California, from Washington, from Oregon, from those in the great Northwest that talked about the response that they're receiving from FEMA now and how effective it has been. So the work that you are doing supporting this council and Secretary Hegseth will clearly show benefits into the future. We're able to provide a more robust opportunity with states as they share their responsibility with the federal government in responding to these disasters. So thank you very much for your time and your effort. Your team has done a remarkable job. I want to thank our team. Patrick Powers and his group are always there to respond. We sometimes spend more time on the phone with Patrick than I do my wife, but that's okay. It is beneficial, and she understands the relationship. So all of us have been working diligently over these months to make sure that we don't disappoint you or our president as our North Star. We're going to make sure that we get this job done. So thank you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Governor Bryant. I appreciate it so much. And yes, Secretary Hegseth has been absolutely phenomenal partner in all of this too. And so we appreciate his national security perspective and wisdom that his team brings as well. So you all will have a fantastic discussion today.
And we're excited about being in Oklahoma.
Yes.
This is our third day. We have spent 8 to 10 hours in this meeting room for the last 3 days, but we are dedicated to our work. But our host is here with us today. You know him, Madam Secretary. Y'all served as governors together, as I served as governor earlier in this young man's term. I remember when he was elected, and he's doing a great job. And we have enjoyed being here in Oklahoma City, not only at this beautiful capital, Governor, the facilities that you have offered us for this very important work, but also the hospitality. We've been able to see some of your great restaurants in the town. My cardiologist may not approve of that, but they got great steaks here in Oklahoma. So Governor Kevin Stitt is here this morning with welcoming remarks, and he has done a remarkable job as governor of Oklahoma. He is seeing the end of his term come. I remember that well. We were just discussing that. But the legacy he leads for Oklahoma, who certainly knows about disasters and about tornadoes, and about 30 years ago, the man-made disaster that was the attack on the federal building here in Oklahoma City. Many of our members, Governor, were able to tour the National Memorial at that site, and it is certainly something that we will never forget. So now I turn it over to Governor Kevin Stitt, Governor of the great state of Oklahoma.
Well, thank you so much, Governor Bryant. And first off, I want to welcome everybody here. We're so excited to have y'all in our great state and beautiful capital. And Secretary Noem, just want to remind you that college football season starts tonight in Oklahoma. So Oklahoma State plays, and it was 1 year ago. How much has your life changed in 1 year? So you and Brian were my guests when Oklahoma State put it to South Dakota State University on August 31st. Then our season just went south after that. But we certainly enjoyed having you and Brian and in Stillwater. And it's only been 1 year ago. And think how much things have changed since then. Yeah,
they've changed a lot. Thank you. That was a fun day. We'll have to do that again, except
that's right.
We'll have the Jacks will have to come out on top.
And Brian, her husband, is a great athlete. So we were throwing the football down on the field before the game started and had a great time. And so if y'all are here tonight, anybody wants tickets to the game, just let me know and we'll take you up to Stillwater for the Thursday night kickoff. But
we have a few games in Mississippi this weekend, so I may need to get something's going on there. I know.
Well,
Oxford, Hattiesburg.
Anyway, we're so excited to have you guys here. You know, Oklahoma's experienced more than our fair share of devastating tornadoes and historical floods, and most recently wildfires that impacted thousands across our state. And as governor, one of the things that I'm most proud of is what we call the Oklahoma standard. You see, and Governor Bryant touched on it, in 1995, after the Oklahoma City bombing, the world watched in shock as people ran into danger to rescue strangers and to care for families they'd never met. And out of that was born the Oklahoma Standard. And the Oklahoma Standard is this idea that when hardship hits, it isn't the government that fixes the problem, but it's neighbors walking with neighbors. And in our toughest moments, we lift each other up and we meet the needs of our friends and our neighbors without being asked. And back in 1995, I remember the New York City Fire Department sent a whole bunch of people to Oklahoma to help us with our recovery efforts. And then we repaid that kindness after 9/11 as we sent resources to New York. And I know a lot of states did the exact same thing. And so Americans are always in this together when disaster strikes. After wildfires in March that ripped through our communities and our neighborhoods, I also saw neighbors jump into action. And that same standard lives and breathes today in Oklahoma. I saw church members walking up and down the street serving coffee and breakfast burritos to those that were surveying the damage. I saw friends helping elderly neighbors start navigating the complicated insurance process while they're literally sitting on the front porch of a home that was destroyed. It's heartbreaking, but at the same time, it's really the very best of humanity on display. And after every tornado, every ice storm, every flood, every fire, Oklahomans, they band together and we begin rebuilding. And if we're known for anything, I love the fact that Oklahoma is known for the Oklahoma Standard. And today and this week, you guys are going to spend a lot of time talking about how to best respond to disasters nationwide. It's our experience that FEMA's response to disasters is not necessarily effective or efficient. During a brutal tornado season here in Oklahoma in 2024, we learned that hundreds of FEMA employees were on the ground in Oklahoma. That sounds great until you find out they were in an office building in Oklahoma City, 75 miles from where the damage was. And you ask any Oklahomans what they were doing, and no one can really tell you. Now, I'm not trying to disparage any one employee, but the reality is that a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. can't tell people in Oklahoma or Louisiana or Florida the best way to respond to a disaster. That's best left to local emergency managers. Oklahoma's Emergency Management Director, Annie Vest, who's with us today, which I know you guys are getting to share with her some, and you guys are meeting. She shared with me some staggering information this past week. So from 2015 to 2025, Oklahoma had 20 disasters that cleared the threshold for FEMA intervention. FEMA allocated $1 billion to these disasters. But here's the deal. FEMA also spent an estimated $500 million on administrative costs. Every dollar wasted on bureaucracy is a dollar not spent rebuilding a family's home or a business. That, I believe, is what we're trying to change. The truth is we aren't certain how much FEMA spends to administer disaster assistance. The overhead costs are buried. They're spread across programs. They're never fully accounted for. That's not efficient. It's really not transparent. There's a clear solution. Let's slash the bureaucracy at the top and block grant the funds out to the states to respond to emergencies rapidly and efficiently. States can take on more of the responsibility if they have the flexibility to rebuild quickly without the interference of federal red tape and layers of administration. I'm also advocating for a discussion around the threshold for disaster designation. You probably won't hear this from a lot of other governors, but listen, right now in Oklahoma, a disaster costing $7.45 million. That triggers a FEMA intervention. In agreement with my emergency management directors, I'm calling on FEMA to quadruple that threshold. Take it up. our past disaster shows Oklahomans can manage events up to $30 million. Taxpayer dollars shouldn't be reserved. They should be reserved for true catastrophes, not routine storms. If we look at the last decade, back to the 2015 to 2025 timeframe, we would still have received, if you would have moved that disaster threshold up, we would have still received 93% of that $1 billion. Ensuring that our worst disasters don't leave communities in an impossible situation. We get it. There is an absolute, we need some of that help for the major stuff. But we do not need Washington for every single thunderstorm. We need them for events that truly overwhelm our states. We as states have become entirely too reliant on the federal government. With $37 trillion in debt, we cannot keep spending above our revenue. That's why I've been a proponent for a balanced budget amendment. And just to take us off track just for a second, there's 28 states have passed a balanced budget amendment. We think South Carolina is going to pass it. As you know, if we get to 34 states, we force Congress to take this up, then it has to be ratified by 38 states. But it just seems like it's out of control, the spending. And if you go back to 2019 spending on the expense side, if we were still at 2019 expenses, we'd have a balanced budget today. But instead, we're spending $2 trillion over our income. And that's just going on our national debt. Okay, I come from the mortgage business. And I remember when I bought my first house in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Governor, it was $66,000 I spent. Okay.
All the money in the world.
That's right. It was all the money in the world. Just graduated from college. I remember writing my first house payment, and it was about $500. And I looked down, and only $48 went towards principal. I was like, what? Only 48 went towards principal? But at least I knew in 30 years I was going to own my house. Well, the reason I tell you all that, and I tell this in a lot of my speeches, is because we don't pay principal and interest on our national debt. Even if it was only $48, it's interest only. It means we're never paying it off. And then it gets worse because we put $2 trillion on it every single year. It was $36 trillion in December. It's already at $37 trillion. Congress has a tough job on how to appropriate money, but you have to have a limit, and it's called your revenue. Okay. But as states, it's our job to serve our constituents in the best way we know how. States have balanced budgets. We rely on our own expertise and ensure we are prepared for disasters in a way to do that. Oklahoma tries to do that well. I want to thank President Trump, Secretary Noem, for convening these types of groups to focus on how do we streamline, how do we get dollars on target and not through the bureaucracy. So I think that's the heart of President Trump, and we applaud that. And all of us in this room, we want to take care of these disasters, but we want to do it as efficiently and effectively as possible. So again, I want to close and just thank you guys so much for coming to Oklahoma. You're always welcome here. We think we have the most beautiful capital in the country. And I hope our OEM team can be a really good resource to all of you as we discuss how to move forward, how to improve this process for all of America. And if America is going to meet the challenges of tomorrow, we have to put the states back in charge. It's the states that are actually responding to these disasters. It's the states that build schools and hires teachers, not the federal government. We know our land, we know our people, and we know how to respond faster, leaner, and smarter than Washington ever could. That's the Oklahoma standard, and that should be the American standard. I'm so proud to be an American, but I thank God every day that I was raised in Oklahoma. Thank you so much.
Madam Secretary, I don't think we could have asked for any better support of what the agenda looks like than the Oklahoma standard. Absolutely, our heart is making sure that states have the opportunity and some responsibility for the shared response to disasters that are not catastrophic in nature. So, Governor, you're absolutely right. Thank you for the Oklahoma standard. We also have with us Governor Abbott, which is online from the great state of Texas. Governor Abbott, welcome. We're going to hear from Chief Noem Kidd just a moment. And of course, our council member, also Governor Youngkin from the great state of Virginia. I'll turn to him momentarily for reports from his subcommittee. But just now, the council would like to hear from Chief Noem Kidd of Texas, Governor Abbott, who I will tell you has done, in our eyes, a remarkable job both responding to the disasters of the Hill Country flooding in early July, but is also a valued member of the FEMA Review Council. Chief Kidd, what we would appreciate is hearing I know what would be a difficult report from you, both for the secretaries and to this council of those tragic events of the 4th of July in the Hill Country of Texas. Chief Kidd, I'll recognize you for that report.
Thank you, Governor. I want to start by thanking my boss, Governor Abbott, on the line for his continued support and leadership in our Texas legislature. I think we are one of the few states in the nation whose State Emergency Operations Center is open 24/7, 365 and staffed ready to go. That's only because of the leadership and the support of our Texas legislature and Governor Abbott. We are also staffed with full-time meteorologists, and we are constantly watching the weather of what's happening in our state from all threats and all hazards. We open up our calls to all 254 county elected officials and all 1,216 city officials on a daily basis to make sure we are singularly focused and singularly coordinated on the threats that face our state. On the morning of Wednesday, July the 2nd, we held a statewide weather call, and we had over 500 lines call into that call to make sure that our local officials were informed of not only the weather we were facing for that holiday weekend coming up, but know what resources the governor had placed out across the state. By Thursday morning, resources were in place across the state of Texas, covering 44 of the 254 Texas counties. Those 44 counties are roughly the size of Indiana. We all know on Friday morning, July 4th, in the early morning hours, we had a 9-mile high rain cloud that dropped a tremendous amount of water in one location, and it did not move. That rainfall caused a 36-foot rise in water in about a 45-minute period. That impacted many of our campers that were there on vacation for the 4th of July celebrating our Independence Day, as well as we all know, Camp Mystic and some of the children that were there that we lost in that tragic event. I want to quickly talk, Governor, about what worked. And I'll tell you right now, what worked was the support from our federal partners and our other states. The United States Coast Guard was there with us immediately, as well as the Border Patrol and their Borstar team. Resources arrived immediately, and this is important, upon request and without delay. We all know that getting too many too many resources too early in the event can be a problem in and of itself. Command and control is very important, and the sequencing and layering of resources that come in has got to be communicated and coordinated. Our pre-positioned assets quickly tied in with federal partners and federal assets and reinforced the state's support. Secretary Noem, I want to thank you for your direct communication with us and Governor Abbott. I want to thank the White House for their fast decision-making and the high-level coordination that came from all of the DHS team. The White House was there and provided consistent report, reinforcing local and state response, never taking over and never getting in the way. Our federal assets integration was seamless. There was no friction between state and federal partners. That hasn't happened in the past. Too many times our federal partners have come in, whether they've been a part of the military department or other resource, and think it's their response to handle instead of supporting our state and local government. I also want to thank the 27 states and the governors that sent resources to support us. The Emergency Management Assistance Compact worked. It worked very well. We got what we needed when we asked for it. There was no delay in that response. And finally, I need to thank all of our local partners that were there, that were ahead of the time, many of them volunteers in many of this rural part of Texas, that left their homes, their families, and their businesses to be there for our local partners. And then the men and women of Texas A&M Task Force 1, one of the 28 FEMA Urban Search and Rescue teams. Those people were there ahead of the event and saved countless number of lives. I'd quickly like to go to the next slide and talk about some areas for improvement and things that, Governor, we've talked about on this council, and I want to reinforce the need to continue to improve. Debris management has got to take place faster at the local and the state and the federal level. And I want to thank Secretary Noem and the White House, because we were able to work through this event looking at private property debris, commercial debris, wet debris, as well as the myriad of trees that were on everybody else's private property. We had one debris package that we were able to work through, and picking up that debris as fast as possible and helping with the search and rescue efforts through the debris pickup has been phenomenal. Second, we need to keep working on housing. The individual assistance program was turned on immediately. Grateful for that. But as we all know, the backbone of recovery for individuals is not in the federal dollar. Governor, as you mentioned, it's in our local partners and our faith-based organizations. We had over 19,000 volunteers that showed up to support Texans during their time of need. Many of our faith-based organizations are still on the ground and helping rebuild. Many of our Texas performers are raising money. Over $120 million raised to support homes. Governor Abbott was there with the King of Country Music, George Strait, raised money. We have already put tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars back into people helping rebuild their home. The financial relief has got to continue to move at the pace that it does, because 55 days after the event, we still have people that are out of their homes, but they all have a safe place to stay right now, and they are all starting the rebuilding process. We've got to continue to innovate in our case management solutions. Case management has got to be turned on, as we've talked about in many of our work sessions here. We've got to turn on case management at the beginning of the incident. We cannot wait days, weeks, or months to get our case management turned back on. And then the need for meteorological forecasting and communications. As much as we all want to know when it's going to rain, where it's going to rain, how much it's going to rain, and how fast it's going to fall, technology does not meet our expectations yet. And so as locals, as state, and as federal partners, we've got to come up with a better way to forecast the weather and make sure that our communications are shared with our local partners. And then on the last thing that I want to talk about that we need to improve is really would like some help with the Internal Revenue Service and the 501c3 status of nonprofits to quickly get money donated from great Americans trying to get into the hands of other great Americans. The 501c3 status could use a little bit of attention that we can look at together, and I hope that's something that we can talk about. And then finally, for my last slide, Secretary Noem, I want to thank you. In my 30 years of doing this job and in this business, this has been the fastest and most effective federal support Texas has ever received. Your leadership, Secretary, your partnership, asking what we need, listening what we need, being there with us, walking the streets and walking the flooded areas with us, talking to the family members is unheard of, and I'm grateful for you. Texas Task Force 1, one of our federal search and rescue team, fully equipped, fully trained, fully funded, was able to deploy at my direction. In addition to all of the other teams that you sent, I'm grateful for that. The partnership brought the right resources, the right place at the right time. It saved lives and it made a difference. And Governor, that's the end of my prepared remarks. Happy to answer any questions if there are.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn to Governor Abbott now. I know, Governor Abbott, again, we appreciate the time that Chief Kidd has to spend with his council. Has been invaluable. All of us continue to pray for the people of the great state of Texas, and not the tragedy that occurred there, but also for the continued response and responders and all that y'all are doing there. If you have any comments, Governor Abbott, we'd be glad to recognize you for that purpose at this time. Noem, thanks again. As all of us watched that on our 4th of July, as we were going about enjoying our holidays, we could only imagine the loss of the children. I've got grandchildren. Any of us have young children and grandchildren, and it was beyond our ability to comprehend the hurt and pain and suffering that was going on there during that flood. So God bless you for what y'all are doing and the lives that were saved.
Yes, sir.
Many lives, hundreds of lives that were saved by our Coast Guard and other response. It is encouraged again, Madam Secretary, as you may have heard, the response of how the state of Texas is working closely with our federal partners at DHS and FEMA. So let me add, great work by your team.
Well, Texas is a fantastic state, and Noem has been an absolute amazing leader. So I want to thank him for always putting the people first and being concise. Him and Governor Abbott were concise in their asks and needs, and that makes it easy for us to deploy and support their efforts. So God is good.
Amen.
Amen.
All the time. We'll turn now to the business of the council. Again, let me take a moment of personal privilege to remember 25 years ago tomorrow, when we were all awakened to the idea of a storm called Katrina that took 18,000 lives across Louisiana and Mississippi. $125 billion in damage. It was a Cat 3 hurricane. We were shocked to see the images both before and after. 125-mile-an-hour wind, a 28-foot surge, storm surge that went 3 miles in. The Waveland Fire Department had their fire trucks parked, Governor, 3 miles from our coastline, and they went underwater after that surge made its way across the entire Mississippi Gulf Coast. So God bless all those that survived. They loved, and the loss will forever be remembered at Katrina. Chief Kidd, thank you. Again, we continue to lift you up in our prayers, but also I know the Secretary and FEMA continue to offer all their support, tangible support that they can. Governor Abbott, what a remarkable leader you have there in the state of Texas. So as we observed at our first public meeting, our president is a man of action. And so this council is emulating that and becoming a council of action. Our council members have traveled thousands of miles. I feel like that includes me only, but I know all of you have joined me in this great travel to California, to Vermont, to Oklahoma, to Texas, to other locales. We will soon be in North Carolina and Puerto Rico. We have listened to thousands of voices, both leading us in a direction which would be monumental for this United States of America, but also for the states and the localities. As on this week, we listened to tribal leaders from across America, a Native American leadership, Madam Secretary, that told us of the concerns that they have, but also offered their help and support. It was amazing to me to see the leaders of the tribes, Governor, that were saying, don't just call on us in times of tragedy. If someone else has a tragedy, call on us to help. The leadership of those tribal listening opportunities has been remarkable. As I mentioned, we've engaged in listening sessions across this nation. And again, I need to emphasize the point here, the overwhelming positive nature of the feedback that we have heard has been received loud and clear. Whether in Los Angeles or Vermont, there's a deep appreciation for the efforts of our emergency manager. However, it is clear that we must provide recommendations to improve upon FEMA so that our communities, first responders, and our nation receive the very best on their worst day. Beyond the listening sessions, the Council's Federal State Coordinating Subcommittee distributed a nationwide survey to state, local, tribal, and territorial agencies to assess readiness to assume greater responsibility for disaster response. A survey closed earlier this month with over 1,300 total responses, including responses from all 50 states. In closing, let me say, I would like to reiterate my sincere appreciation to the Secretary, but all the members of the Council. I see the hard work that you're putting into this, and I believe that it will benefit not only the President of the United States and his decision to move forward and making sure that FEMA is the very best that it can be, but also the locals. As we have talked, as governor, when I would travel, I would see the fire chiefs, the local responders, the police officers. During Katrina, many of them approached me and said, the uniform I have on is all that I have left in the world. And they were reporting for duty. We are doing this for them and for those that have lost all that they have in these tragedies, these catastrophic events. As one of our responders said during the listening tour of California, disasters can be unpredictable, but our response to them should not be. Thank you very much. We will turn now to Governor Glenn Youngkin. Governor Youngkin has done a remarkable job of leading, along with Governor Abbott, the Federal State Coordinating Subcommittee. And Governor Abbott, I remind everyone, governors have day jobs, and he has taken his time away from the vast duties of the governors of the state of Virginia to be with us today. So Governor Youngkin, thank you for your report.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Governor Bryan, for your leadership. Governor Stitt, thank you for hosting and welcoming everybody to Oklahoma. And I particularly appreciate your comments around the Oklahoma standard. And I do firmly believe that the standard that exists in our emergency response personnel is exactly that. A standard to run to danger when others run away, a standard to put others' interests ahead of their own, a standard to recognize that first order of business is saving lives. And that is a standard that not just reflects Oklahoma's character, but I think it reflects the character of the entire country. So, Governor Stitt, once again, I deeply appreciate your comments. And I also appreciate your input. One of the big aspects of the work that the state and local response subcommittee has undertaken is to listen. And I want to say also that the state and federal coordination subcommittee, which is the other subcommittee, and our subcommittee have been working arm in arm because we find ourselves benefiting from each other's interactions. And the extensive effort to listen, the extensive effort to engage, and to not just hear complaints, but more importantly, recommendations and solutions, I think has been one of the foundations of the work that the entire FEMA Review Council has undertaken. And I think that speaks to the value of this work. I want to thank President Trump for putting us together and charging us with this great opportunity and enabling us to get this work done. Secretary Noem and Secretary Hegseth, thank you for your leadership. And I also appreciate your personal engagement. I've had conversations late at night and early in the morning. And so thank you. And I particularly want to thank our members of this committee, particularly Governor Abbott, who I, of course, have so deeply appreciated your leadership and NIM's leadership in Texas. But I also just appreciate the fact that the experience base that you bring to this effort is really unparalleled. And then, of course, Mayor Castor and Sheriff Rosie, thank you. We'll get to some of the summary comments in a minute. And I just want to alert both of you. I'll be handing you the baton here in a minute for a few comments. Let me just begin with the basic objective that we have had so far. And that is to recognize that engaging and listening with federal, state, local, tribal, territorial leadership, first responders, legislators, users, nonprofits has been critically important. And the survey that we undertook, which, as Governor Bryant, you shared, over 1,300 respondents from all 50 states, from 6 tribes, 1 territory, 83,000 questions that were answered that covered the 32 core capabilities that are outlined for FEMA. How should these capabilities be best rendered at the local level or at the federal level? How should we think about the standards for those capabilities? How should we think about collaboration? How should we think about, yes, the funding? And the response was overwhelming. And that overwhelming response, I think, has led to 5 key takeaways. And again, the support from Secretary Noem, your team, and particularly the dedicated folks who have helped us sift through this extensive response and really identify 5 key themes that I want to share with everyone. I do believe that as you hear the themes that come from the efforts from this committee, you will hear great consistency that once again underpins our collective affirmation that FEMA needs to be transformed, and yet it can be transformed, and it can fulfill its central mission to not only prepare and not only to mitigate, but to respond and support Americans in the face of some of the most horrific disasters. So the 5 big themes that came out of our work, and again, these are the survey recipients' responses categorized into 5 themes. The first is to accelerate federal funding to the communities. Very simply, to modernize and streamline the process of funding direct assistance. And I'm going to use that word again, direct assistance, not assistance that is migrating through a myriad of bureaucratic processes, but support the states and local capabilities with emergency response funding quickly, so they know what they're getting and they understand that they can put it to use in order to save lives and commence immediate recovery. This was the overwhelming number one response. I think we heard it from Governor Stitt as well. Second is to empower local and regional readiness. This again is a shifting of the leadership of the response to states and local authorities. I know as a governor that when we know a disaster is coming in preparation for a hurricane or a major storm, we get ready and we go to work by deploying the resources that we know we have access to. It is that sentiment to empower us to do that and to have the federal government play a support role, but not a lead role in that effort. Again, the theme here has been consistent. I think this is underpinned by strong recommendations to strengthen the mutual aid system. EMAC works incredibly well. It could be so much better. And I think you'll hear even more on those lines from the State Federal Coordination Subcommittee. Third big theme is to make sure that we are protecting and evolving the national lifeline capabilities. And what do we mean by that? The capabilities that you just heard from Texas Task Force One, the capabilities that we have in the Commonwealth of Virginia with two urban search and rescue teams that are set to national standards so that when they are called upon, those that are receiving the help know exactly what they're going to get. This again will overlap with some of the great recommendations that are evolving out of the State and Federal Coordination Subcommittee. The fourth big theme deals with our more rural communities. And as a governor of a state that saw Hurricane Helene devastate Southwest Virginia, devastate it because, of course, there was a tremendous storm that hit. And yet we were able to mobilize tremendous resources ahead of the storm in order to protect lives and begin the recovery process. But rural communities oftentimes find themselves less prepared, less equipped, and therefore less capable to deal with emergencies versus urban centers. And that is one consistent theme from those communities, which is how do we use regional capability buildup? How do we use the reassignment of response capabilities into states and regional areas to make sure that Southwest Virginia, Eastern Tennessee, West Virginia, and of course, Western North Carolina will have the kinds of response capabilities that we collectively need. Again, the EMAC system works incredibly well, but it can work even better. And then fifth, and I think you've already heard some of these themes, is to unite the nation's resilience network. And oftentimes we forget, as Governor Stitt reminded us, that the capabilities within the nonprofit community, the capabilities within the private sector to respond quickly, to bring philanthropic support, and to get moving, particularly in the recovery effort, oftentimes are inhibited, if not sometimes prevented, by government bureaucracy. And therefore, the nation's resilience network is comprised of, yes, federal agencies, and yes, state and local and tribal and territorial capabilities, 501c3 nonprofits, but we need to link it together and make sure that we are coordinated in using it as opposed to suboptimizing the response. These five big themes of the objectives that we should have are underpinned by numerous very specific recommendations. And I think as we move into over the course of the next months, the final report writing, Governor Bryant, and I deeply appreciate your leadership here, that we can incorporate the work of the two subcommittees and, of course, the overall FEMA Review Council efforts, in addition to the continued collaboration at federal, state, and local levels to translate these great suggestions, recommendations into actionable answers. That is my optimistic view of where we can get to based on the tremendous feedback that we've had to date. And Mayor Castro, I'm coming to you in 2 minutes. But I do think that our effort continues to listen. And therefore, the listening sessions that are scheduled in North Carolina and also in Puerto Rico, along with the continued input that I know we're all receiving, remains critically important. Governor, that's the high-level summary of the work that we've done to date. Again, I want to thank the over 1,300 respondents, but also the so many participants in the listening sessions that have taken place. And with that, Mayor Castro, I'm going to pass it over to you for a few comments.
All right, thank you, Governor. And I agree too, that survey was of such great value for all of our communities and our nation as well. And it has been quite an honor for me to be a part of this esteemed group, and the fact that everyone has come together and coalesced around these simple action, well, I won't say simple, but actionable steps, as opposed to aspirational goals that sometimes are a result of these types of committees and groups, is very heartwarming to see, because I do feel that we will be able to make these actionable changes that will be of benefit to communities, states, and frankly, every American. So very excited about that. I want to thank everyone who has put their time and effort into this, bringing their experience and their enthusiasm to changing this bureaucratic-laden process. So very excited about that. And just two areas that I would like to comment on before we get down into the weeds here. And this came up on when I was present in Oklahoma, talking about how we have been tasked with response and recovery. And I do feel that we should, as a group, make a request to include the preparedness and mitigation. And we have already heard from my good friend Kevin Guthrie and Noem Kidd some of the simple steps that can be taken in there with the training, the grant funding, projects that really save lives, save property, and certainly save costs as well. And that is a very important component of response, FEMA response overall, and for communities as well. So I would like to again bring that recommendation up. And I don't think that it'll be a heavy lift. I believe that our emergency managers have the simple steps, not simple, but simplified steps that can be taken that will be of benefit again to all Americans. And then second is the insurance. I'm very excited about this parametric insurance. We have a company from the city of Tampa that will be in Washington making a presentation, but I don't want us to lose sight or to judge of the importance of the insurance aspect and just feel that we can push that off to private companies and all will be solved or coming up roses. Because as having been hit by two hurricanes the end of September and October, I had my insurance reworked and talked about the different insurance companies. And I said, well, from my experience, 38 years now with dealing with hurricanes, you just get the cheapest because they're not going to pay anyway. So we need to ensure that there's legislation for dealing with insurance claims, and also make sure that that the insurance companies aren't able to just parachute out when a community is hit by a major event. And we've seen a lot of that in Florida as well. So I do believe that, not in this committee, but legislation, there needs to be legislation dealing with insurance too. That's not our issue, but I do believe that as a group, collectively, we need to be aware of that and not just look to push insurance off to privatization. As Kevin brought up, in the state of Florida, there's only a little over 30% of Floridians that have flood insurance. And our position is, if you have a Florida driver's license, you should have flood insurance. So we really need to take a broader look as a country at that. Again, may not be a concern or a requirement of this group, but we can't easily push it off to privatization. Other than that, I could not be more pleased with all of the diverse input from private industry, from local governments, from the surveys, from different organizations and agencies, that everyone has been consistent in those basic 5 recommendations that you just outlined, Governor. So that's it for me, and I'm very excited to see the finished product.
Mayor, thank you so much, and thank you for also gathering information from other mayors around America. It's been invaluable. Sheriff Rosie, I turn to you now. Cordell Stutz, I hope I have that proper, but it has been an honor to have the great sheriff from here, and I turn to her for remarks now.
Thank you. I think that Mayor Castor did a very good job in kind of breaking down our committee's goals, what we've been able to identify. I just want to reiterate 2 things. First of all, thanking the continued commitment of this committee and understanding we all have day jobs. And so I'm so grateful because the commitment is there and it shows. Having been here in the city of Oklahoma for the first time myself, I cannot tell you that the impact of being here, reminding each and every one of us the importance of the work that we are doing on this committee. Having visited the National Museum yesterday really exemplified a good outcome of a terrible event and setting that standard, that Oklahoma standard that maybe we should now make the American standard. I want to thank again also the opportunity of all the tribal people who came to speak to us. I think that was something that was definitely, for me anyway, very impressive. I didn't think I would hear what I heard. They want to be partners and not just recipients of help. And that's amazing to me. And I think that will be something that we will be able to put forth together as a committee. And additionally, I just want to emphasize on the first responder side, the importance of adding preparedness and mitigation to all of our recommendations in any capacity. I think that will be something that will ultimately be a big help to how we respond to crisis in this country. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Sheriff, being Sheriff of Miami-Dade, you were in the zone where a lot of disasters occur there in the great state of Florida. Your governor's a great leader, but thank you for your commitment to this council as well and your comments today.
Thank you, sir.
Earlier, I may have mentioned 25 years ago to Katrina, living in a world of fact checks. I was quickly reminded it was 20, which of course I know it's been 2 decades. Time does seem to get by. 20 years ago on tomorrow when Katrina came ashore. So for anyone disturbed by that, believe me, it is 20 years. I will turn now to Executive Director Kevin Guthrie. Director Guthrie has been an invaluable part of this council and is managing the Disaster Response and Recovery Assessment Subcommittee as co-chair of that committee and has done a remarkable job with Noem Kidd. And Director Guthrie, I want to thank you for all your hard work, taking your time away from the great state of Florida, as well as Chief Kidd. I will turn to you now for subcommittee report from Disaster Response and Recovery Assessment Subcommittee.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning. It's an honor to be here in Oklahoma City today and to have learned valuable lessons over the last 3 days. I want to again express my gratitude for President Trump, Secretary Noem, Secretary Hegseth for this opportunity to help provide recommendations to enhance emergency management for all Americans. I want to thank Governor Stitt for his hosting us here in the state. For opening remarks, my opening remarks are reflective of the entire group from the Response and Recovery Subcommittee. President Trump is putting Americans first by creating a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to methodically align and strengthen how emergency management is integrated across all levels of government. We don't get an opportunity to hit the reset button often, and we've been given that opportunity through this committee. Through numerous listening sessions, including one that included tribal nations from Alaska to Florida and many from right here in the Midwest, we have gathered several important insights, and I'd like to highlight them. Most participants agree with the mantra that disasters are locally executed, state managed, and federally supported. This means responsibility should remain at the lowest level possible. You heard Governor Stitt talk about that just a few moments ago. Specifically, we asked participants in the sessions what federal support means to them, and overwhelmingly, we heard money. But we also heard a few answers and focus on personnel and equipment. We believe federal support can be boiled down to 3 core areas. That's standardization, coordination, and financial aid. And that came directly from the participants. A good example is the 28 federal urban search and rescue teams that have already been referenced here today. FEMA does a great job of typing and coordinating those teams, but at the end of the day, the personnel are local first responders who periodically deploy to other jurisdictions. FEMA provides annual funding support for those responders to train and exercise and equip them to respond. The investment there is twofold. It strengthens our systematic nationwide response, but it also enhances the capabilities of the communities that they serve every day. The key point, federal response assets, and I'm not talking about recovery, I'm talking about response assets, are typically not full-time federal employees, but they're local responders who are coordinated, trained, and funded by the federal government. The second part of the mantra is state managed. As Secretary Noem said at the first public meeting, funding will need to be shifted to something like block grants. In the listening sessions, many emphasized the need to receive financial assistance more quickly, but hesitate about block grants based on previous experiences such as Section 428 of the Stafford Act. The Response and Recovery Subcommittee has spent hours, maybe even days, exploring ways to accelerate local recovery through direct funding for public and individual assistance. Every disaster is different, and each state, local, tribe, and territory will manage it differently. As our tribal partners pointed out here in this room on Tuesday, there are cultural, building material, artistical, economical issues that are different as far as the East is from the West. And our system has to recognize that and be supportive in those specific responses and recoveries. Our goal is to identify federal minimum standards for recovery funding, while giving the states the flexibility to chart the best path forward for their communities and their citizens. The last part of that mantra is locally executed. Responsibility for the response and recovery of a disaster clearly rests with the local government officials and residents. During the Los Angeles listening session, one of the local elected mayors emphasized that local officials should have more responsibility and decision-making authority. We agree, and there are ways we can help locals be better prepared for their incidents. For example, in Florida, communities are required to develop a comprehensive emergency management plan. These plans are essential for any disaster, but they mean absolutely nothing if the local government employees and even the local community are not trained to implement and utilize them effectively. Local emergency managers should be properly trained and qualified for their positions to ensure plans translate into action. Alongside their elected officials, they are the leaders to get through a disaster. Local communities should be investing in themselves to be prepared for the disasters they know will come. This is accomplished not only through training and exercises, but also by addressing financial preparedness with the support of insurance and disaster relief funding. Communities should prepare residents and visitors by promptly providing clear information about potential hazards and threats, along with guidance on how to stay safe and prepared. While I'm the co-chair with Noem on the Response and Recovery Subcommittee, I would be remiss if I did not share one of the most talked about portions of our listening sessions, and that's mitigation. During every single listening session, at least one person has emphasized the importance of mitigation. I will say that mitigation is probably and perhaps the most misunderstood vertical of emergency management. Mitigation saves lives. It protects property. It reduces cost and future disasters. Oklahoma Director Annie McVest and Arkansas Director AJ Gary discussed in this room this week how safe rooms and flood controls have saved hundreds, if not thousands of lives from deadly tornadoes and floods in the Midwest. Mitigation makes sense when you can rebuild and recover. However, it is very, very hard sell to strengthen something existing that is unaffected, as the return on investment may be unrealized. Mitigation has to be locally executed at that local level. By local, I mean not just local government, but all the way down to homeowners and business owners. There is a responsibility there that they must take. This looks like building code standards and best practices, such as not building in a floodway or at least building above the floodway, homeowners purchasing flood protection devices, hardening and maintaining their homes. Mitigation must go further than just asking for federal funds. State and locals must invest in their communities to stay resilient. In closing, I'm going to lead with this, and we've done this week. It's time to have an honest conversation with ourselves as emergency management directors. Noem posed a question this week, and he asked the states that were represented in the room this week in a closed listening session, how many of you depend on your sustainment funding of at least 50% at the state level? All those in this room said at least 50%, and it went much higher than that. No other public safety centric agency at the state or local level depends on 50% or more of their funding coming from the federal government. States and locals should be investing in themselves instead of shifting responsibility of sustainment onto the federal government. A scary thought is 6 U.S. Code 821, Section 3A and B defines a catastrophic event, and this country has never experienced it by definition. Never. We've had some really, really bad disasters, but we've conditioned ourselves that now a 10 out of 10 is actually probably more like a 6, 7, or 8 on that scale. We have not experienced the maximum of maximums, but we have to be ready for that day. Each state faces unique hazards. State-driven investment allows for the solutions that are tailored to the specific needs rather than relying on a one-size-fits-all federal program. When citizens see their state investing directly in preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation, it builds confidence in government. It fosters stronger community resilience. Furthermore, communities that are prepared and supported by state resources can bounce back much more quickly instead of waiting for federal programs to activate. Every community has different vulnerabilities. State-driven investments help address those local issues. By funding, training, outreach, local preparedness initiatives, and mitigation, states can foster a culture where citizens know their risk and how to act before the disaster strikes. I am proud to see the progress of this council, Governor, and I'm making thoughtful recommendations to the president. I want to personally thank the designated federal officer, Patrick Powers, and his staff. They truly are the backbone of a lot of this work that is going on, keeping us on track and dedicating countless hours to transcribing, researching, and collecting data that drives the council's efforts. I want to thank my partner, Noem Kidd, Mark Cooper, and Bob Fenton for their support on this. We could not do it without each other. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Secretary Noem, Secretary Hegseth, and President Trump for your commitment and leadership to this council.
Thank you, Director Guthrie and Chief Kidd, for the vital report. It is encouraging to me to hear more and more leaders and governors acknowledge that states must take their necessary role in supporting the response during times of disasters and clearly identifying what a catastrophic disaster is. And no one knows that better than Kevin Guthrie and Noem Kidd. We're going to turn now to Michael Watley, not only a member of the council, but someone who has been doing yeoman's work in helping with the recovery of his beloved state of North Carolina. So, Mr. Chairman, it's great to have you here. I'll turn with you now so we might receive an update from the events that occurred in North Carolina and the response to them.
Thank you, Governor. I'd like to open up by thanking President Trump. He and his administration have continued to deliver substantial aid to my home state of North Carolina as the Western region builds from the massive damage sustained from Hurricane Helene. In the past week alone, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem has announced an additional $124 million in funding from FEMA to North Carolina to cover items like road repairs, critical infrastructure restoration, debris removal, and other emergency actions taken to protect life and property following the storm. FEMA is reimbursing these costs through the Public Assistance Program, which provides funds for state and local government response and recovery work. To date, more than $655 million has been provided to North Carolina from FEMA for road repair, debris removal, critical infrastructure repairs, and more, including more than $350 million in public assistance reimbursements, which have been approved to support the recovery efforts in the state since President Trump took office on January 20th, 2025. The damage caused in North Carolina by Hurricane Helene was catastrophic by any measure. 108 people lost their lives. More than 73,000 homes were damaged, affecting more than 200,000 people. Thousands of roads were closed with an estimated $2.4 billion in damage. 22 wastewater treatment plants and 25 wastewater facilities sustained damage, and approximately 45,000 small businesses sustained over $7 billion in losses, including significant impacts to tourism and agriculture. Thanks to the significant efforts of President Trump and his administration, along with Senators Ted Budd and Tom Tillis, Representatives Chuck Edwards, Virginia Fox, and Tim Moore, we have seen a dramatic improvement in response with a whole of government recovery at every level this year. Following President Trump's trip to Western North Carolina in January, Vice President Vance, Secretaries Noem, Duffy, Rollins, and Turner, along with many other key administration officials, have toured the region and met with local officials, recovery teams, and small business owners with a simple message: we will be here until the work is done. In addition to the FEMA funding, the Small Business Administration has approved more than $350 million in federal disaster loans to support North Carolina businesses, nonprofits, homeowners, and renters affected by Helene. The Department of Housing and Urban Development has delivered $1.43 billion for housing assistance to the state of North Carolina in Community Development Block Grant disaster recovery funding, as well as $225 million directly to the city of Asheville. The Department of Transportation has provided $350 million to the North Carolina Department of Transportation in 2025 for repairs to the thousands of miles of roads and hundreds of bridges that were damaged by the storm. As I have spoken with local officials, state legislators, small business owners, and homeowners throughout Western North Carolina, I have been amazed at the strength and resilience of the region's people and communities. But the region has needed and will continue to rely on significant government support to recover and rebuild. The work of this FEMA Review Council is critical to ensure that the response to disasters will be dramatically better than the initial response that we saw from FEMA under the Biden administration and the North Carolina government under Roy Cooper following Hurricane Helene. I am very glad that this council will be hosting a public meeting in North Carolina in order to hear from state and local officials, as well as local residents and business owners. I am grateful to President Trump for his leadership, helping North Carolina recover and rebuild, and creating this important council. Thanks also to Secretaries Noem and Hegseth for leading our work here, and to you, Governor Bryant, and the council staff for managing this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Many of us were really unaware of the details, 108 fatalities there in your state. So our heart certainly goes out to them. And the work you are doing, thank you for not again on this council, but caring for the local citizens and the first responders of North Carolina. And we look forward to being there on the 22nd of September. I'll turn to Mark Cooper. Mark has done a remarkable job on the council and has taken charge of helping organize particular meetings across the nation and having a participant. So, Mark, I'll turn to you and then to Bob Fenton, and we'll close.
Thank you, Governor. First, let me say I also want to acknowledge the Katrina anniversary 20 years ago tomorrow. I was actually with Los Angeles County, and I returned to my home state of Louisiana as part of a request from governor to governor. So there are a lot of things that went wrong during Katrina, but one of the good things were all the states that supported my home state of Louisiana during that time. And I also want to say it doesn't go unnoticed that it was the Murrah Federal Building bombing back in 1995 that I think began a time when we realized how important it was to have FEMA and other organizations to support state and local governments. Then we had 9/11 in 2001, Katrina 95, and all the way up to now, Noem, with what happened in Kerrville, Texas. So the work we're doing here is so important. And I'm just so honored to be part of this process. I will say that we talked a lot about these meetings. We have met with at least up close to 40 state emergency management directors, 40 of the states. We also spoken at the NGA meeting. And for those states that we've not spoken with, we're planning on doing a listening session at the NEMA meeting that's going to be held in Wyoming in about a month. So we're really hitting it, Governor. I think we're really getting a lot of great input. And I want to thank the council members that have been able to attend those meetings. And I think we've gotten a lot of great participation, and we'll continue to do that. So I'll turn it over to you, Bob.
Appreciate it, Mark, and appreciate the opportunity, Governor, to talk. First, just appreciate being part of this council as being a member of FEMA, especially been here 28 years. I think back in my career, and I was there 20 years ago in Mississippi, in Katrina, responding to that event, getting there days before it hit landfall with a great group of friends from FEMA that I still work with a great group of friends that I have become lifelong friends with from the state of Mississippi, including you, Governor. And just appreciate the opportunity to really look within the organization for how we can do things better. At the end of the day, our job, the reason why I've been with FEMA 28 years is to serve Americans on their worst day. And nothing's more important. And the opportunity to, make improvements to our administration is critical. We've had numerous efforts over the years with recommendations. And, I think while always good intended, sometimes have come with, levels of bureaucracy being created. And I think it's one of the things that we do sometimes in government is build processes to improve things. And sometimes they, unfortunately, slow down the response. One of the things when we visited the Murrah, Oklahoma museum from the bombing is I saw the timeline for the USAR response. And it was 2 hours after the explosion, a call went to FEMA to send a USAR team. The USAR team deployed 2 teams, one from as far away from California. We're there that night on the pile supporting the local fire department in doing search and rescue and bringing unique equipment and capability to help with that search. We need to make sure we're able to not only sustain that standard, but to improve on it. And so all the great ideas, all the recommendations, the input from all levels of the community, I think are essential to chart where we need to go as an organization. I can tell you one thing that I'm surrounded at FEMA by other Americans that want to help those Americans affected on their worst day and are committed to service. And so our work is so important to give us the tools to help those on those days. So look forward to continuing work and the opportunity to continue to improve to help Americans on those days. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, for the work that you've done not only at FEMA over the last 28 years, and you and I met 20 years ago. I'm sure on that day we're both somewhat younger, and but at 29 August 2005 is a day that all of us will remember. And Mark, I can only imagine returning to New Orleans, to the state of Louisiana, after the devastating flood that raged through that city. So the two of you are certainly subject matter experts on this. Unfortunately, you've had all the experience with disaster that anyone would ever want, but you're sharing that experience to make this process all the better. And I thank you for that. We have reached the end of this council meeting. I will now open the floor. John, we're certainly honored to have you here from the great state of Virginia. And I know Governor Youngkin is blessed to have you there leading emergency management. Again, thank Patrick Powers and his team. We just could not do this without them. And going forward, we'll depend on them even more. Annie, good to meet you and get to know you and be in your wonderful state of Oklahoma. Yesterday, we began to deal with the real core of our report as we talked about individual assistance and as we talked about minimum standards of individuals and direct funding, and then of course National Flood Insurance Program, which, if I know my numbers correctly, are about $26.5 billion in debt and borrowed another $2 billion. So we certainly have that task laid out before us to make sure that that program is vital, continues to serve the people who are living in those areas of danger. Americans deserve that, and we intend to lean in on that. And I think it has been one of the more productive meetings we could have possibly have. I know it was long days, and we thank you for it. I will ask for any questions or comments before we close. Mr. Powers, Captain, any further?
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate it, sir. This concludes our panel discussion, and unfortunately, we're out of time for today's meeting. For the over 2,000 members of the public that have been watching this public meeting, your feedback is both welcome and appreciated. You can contact the FEMA Review Council at FEMAReviewCouncil@hq.dhs.gov. All of your emails are reviewed by the DFO staff and shared with the council members. For additional information regarding the council, please visit our website. Again, that's dhs.gov/FEMA Review Council. Thank you to Secretary Noem, Secretary Hegseth, Governor Stitt, and our council members who were able to participate both in person and online this morning. The FEMA Review Council's third public meeting is hereby closed. Thank you all for attending. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Safe travels.